Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 Mexico Open at Vidanta. This is going to be my preview show where I have a ton of information on this course. I'm going to give you all of my picks. We're going to break them down, do a lot of a player analysis. Also, I've got my bets. I apologize. I didn't get the betting show out yesterday, but I'm going to give you one full show to go through all this information, help you out, to take a look at some bets. Still good odds out there. And of course, start getting your DFS lineups in order. So with all that said, thank you for stopping by and give me about 45 minutes to an hour to get through all this information. And let's go talk a little golf. Okay, so real quick, we're going to do a very quick recap on the Zurich Classic. I actually tweeted out that, I'm at that point with the Zurich Classic that if I had my choice between, of course, the match play and the Zurich, it's no choice for me. I'd much rather have the match play. Now, maybe they can combine these two. Maybe they could do a team format match play, kind of like a Ryder Cup thing. Because, I definitely like the different format, but honestly, just from a watching standpoint, it's not the greatest. Now, from a DFS standpoint, you know what? There's a lot of birdies, and so you get to see a lot of scoring. But honestly, from what I do, the predictive side it's impossible. It really is. You don't know which guys. I mean, first off, we have no stroke gain data for it, but we also just don't know what these guys are going to do. Which you saw, the randomness of Xander and Patrick Cantlay struggle in the easiest format, the best ball, where they both get to play their ball, and typically that's the easiest way to make birdies. And then actually an alternate shot, which they call foursomes, they actually did much better. So it is just a very tough tournament from all sides to figure out. And I've told you guys, well, if the favorites did not win, Xander and Cantlay, then really it was kind of open up. And it just so happens the guys that did win, first-time winners, were guys that I was not on, and we'll talk a little bit why. But of course, you had Davis Riley to your left and Nick Hardy, who ended up winning this thing. You had, of course, Hosler or Clark that led it for a long time. You had even Hoffman and Watney that did pretty well and have, both have had no form. We can go down the list and, guys that shot very well on certain days that, literally had no form at all. And you're kind of almost to a point like Brandon Matthews, who we're going to talk a bit about for the Mexico Open, which there's, makes some sense, and we'll talk about why. But in this format with Sean O'Hare, you would think, those guys would do absolutely nothing. And again, at one time, I feel like maybe after day two or something, they were up in the leaderboard. So I think that's it from the summation. And then let's just look at some real quick information, stroke gain data for both these guys. So Davis Riley, and Nick Hardy, why I was not on these guys as a pairing is they're actually very similar. They're both good ball strikers, but they're terrible. And I don't want to use the word terrible. Not good around the green and putting. Now you can see Davis Riley out of this. This is looking at all his events for the 2023 season, starting at the Amex. He really gained in two events anything substantial against the field putting at the Valspar. For some reason, he likes those Bermuda greens. Right, he had a chance to win there the previous year against Mr. Sammy Burns. Well, other than that, the guy typically loses on the putting. He's not typically very good around the greens. He's got distance, off the tee, and, can go off and on with the irons. And then if you look at what he's done this season so far, literally he's over 50% has missed the cut. So he's played 9 events and he's only made the cut in, I believe, 4? Yeah, missed the cut in 5 and made the cut in 4. So not the greatest form coming in. I mean, his best showing was at the Arnold Palmer. And then we look at Nick Hardy, very similar, right? I mean, I've always known he's a really good ball striker, kind of reminds me of Brandon Wu. Oh, and the funny thing is both these guys were supposed to be in the field for the Mexico Open. They finally get a win on tour, both get $1 million in their, into their accounts, and they both withdraw. So it is what it is, because actually both of them from a play here wouldn't be bad. I mean, their game actually fits what you need to do at Vidanta for the Mexico Open. But anyways, to go back, if you look again around the green, Nick Hardy's bad. And then from a putting perspective, he's only gained again, like in 2 events and even less than what Riley did, almost 2 strokes against the field, lost 5 on Bermuda at the Players. And so, like I said, when you put them as a pairing, it was like, well, yep, they're both good ball strikers, but they're both bad around the green. They're both not really good putters at, most of the time. At least, again, we're looking at the samples of at least this year. So, and then also you can see he's played in a few more events and had, 6, I believe, missed cuts and made the cut 5 times. So again, over 50% of the time, this guy's missing the cut. So neither here or there. I'm just kind of explaining my thoughts on why that was actually, out of the 12 teams I picked, They were not one of them. And then, of course, I was off on Morikawa and Homa. And my big reason was, I just kind of looked at the past history of what Morikawa has done. And it's also, he's not a good putter. I mean, yes, he will find at times lightning in a bottle, but he kind of is now, for me, getting lumped into the great ball strikers that really aren't that good at putters. And there's a ton of those guys out there. A lot of them I like to play. And so we go back and I actually tweeted this out. Now Morikawa's played in this thing 3 times and literally has missed a cut twice. And that was with Matthew Wolff and Max Homa. Matthew Wolff at the time was playing really good golf. And of course, we know what Max Homa has been doing last couple of years. And then Victor Hovland the previous year, they ended up at T29, which is piss poor in this field that they're playing against as a team. So Morikawa is a Zurich ambassador, kind of like an RBC guy. Like so he's going to be playing in this thing for a while, and he's just going to have to figure out. Now, again, if you watched a bit of it, they just did not make putts, these guys, and Max really didn't hit the ball as well as he has been. So I just wanted to call that out, and it kind of rang true again, the good fade, because I think they were, the second most expensive team or third, somewhere up there. And then last, I just kind of pulled up who did well. And again, I kind of mentioned some of these guys, but even Wyndham Clark and Beau Hossler, it wasn't a bad compliment, but again, this is not a scramble, but for alternate, both these guys can kind of putt and chip. Wyndham Clark, of course, has been just, within the last year, he's always been a great driver. Typically, you thought of Wyndham as a really good driver, long distance, bad irons, not that great around the green. And for some reason on POA, the guy putted pretty well. Other than that, he wasn't that great of a putter. Beau Hossler, I looked at as, from his stroke game and what I've seen, can be very wayward with the driver, kind of, and with the irons, but really good short game and putter. Hence, like I said, those guys came. It was really theirs to lose. Shot 1 under for alternate shot, and just wasn't enough. And then the one team that I picked out of these guys, I picked Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor. Somehow the Canadian duos have not done that well here. Of course, I picked Xander, which that team everybody did, and then Neesmith and more. So out of the top 5 teams, I had 3 out of the 5. I just was nowhere near Nick Hardy, and really wasn't that excited about Wyndham Clark and Beau Hossler. I think it's a tournament that if someone said, hey, I think a lot of people would say if it was between the match play and the Zurich, I don't think it's a question there. Let's keep the match play. Let's get rid of the Zurich. Moving on. Let's switch gears here and let's talk about why we're here. The Mexico Open at Vidanta. Of course, this is in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And, I've stated this, if you guys have ever been there or thinking about going to Mexico, of course, it's on the West Coast, but it typically does the Cancun thing. It's amazing. If you've ever been to Hawaii, it's so unique as it's got, of course, the oceans, but it also has got the mountains, the jungles. And if for some reason you're ever going to PV and you want to stay at, I think, one of the most amazing places, check out Garza Blanca. I highly recommend it. So, of course, we had a year of the Mexico Open at Vidanta. Before the Mexico Open was never a PGA event. It was an event. Actually, Carlos Ortiz's brother won it, I believe, the prior year in 2021 at a total different course than this. But anyway, just side note, it became a PGA event. I think it was a lot because the WGC went away. And so the event that we always knew of, the WGC Mexico at Chapultepec, went away. And I thought, well, they wanted to keep that relations up with that. Was it the Salinas, group or whatever. So anyway, some background history there. And of course, which you might have seen a bit of this tweeted out. The architect is Greg Norman. Yes, of course, the head of LIV. And he opened this course back in 2016. It is a par 71. Now, if you go play it, it is a resort course. It's typically a par 73, which would be a little bit like Kapalua where they played a Tournament of Champions. But of course, they added like 200 yards in length for just the PGA event. So if you went and played it, it would be a par 73. And of course, would play somewhere around 7,200 yards if you were playing the tips. But for these guys, they've tuned it out to almost 7,500 yards. And everything I'm just going to show you from the leaderboard, who did well here last year, it's pretty easy to figure out the guys that we want to target. And we're going to dive into that when I get into player profile. Fairways, rough, and greens are past palm, which is pretty unique to the PGA Tour. Offhand, a lot of these guys don't see it a lot unless you play what I call the vacation swing or the island tour swing. That's the courses like Corrales and also the Puerto Rico Open off the top of my head that you have this type of grass. It is pretty rare, but what's unique about this grass, different than Bermuda, is that it literally sits the ball up like it's on a tee, or like when you go to the driving range and you put it on those little fake grass mats, never really sits down in a slide. And there's really no rough here. So where I'm going with all that is that it is some of the most simplest grass types to chip around. Now, if you watched a bit of the Zurich, it's almost was night and day how grainy in Bermuda. And what does that mean? That the grass is actually going against your ball strike. So as the club's coming in, it gets hung up in that grain. Where past palm, it's setting it up and you literally just sweep under it. And hence, around the green is really, out of all the courses I've ever seen, this thing, you literally have to have almost no short game. Like Victor Hovland would just destroy this course. Of course, we've seen what he's done at OHL or Mayakoba. For some reason, I get it, he doesn't play here, but if he ever wanted some quick FedEx points, $1 million in the bank, I think he needs to come play this event. Player field as of last year is 144 players cut, of course, T65 in ties. We've only got one cut line, and that was last year at 2 under. And of course, your winner was Jon Rahm at 17 under last year. Now, if you go back, which I did, sick enough, and watch, they have I think on YouTube, you can watch an hour of Jon Rahm's, all his shots, 4 rounds. And Jon Rahm, if you remember right, was not in peak format. He won the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines and then didn't have another win until actually this event, which kind of kickstarted him back. Of course, he was also a new father. Putting and chipping was kind of off for him. This was, even at this event on Saturday, Sunday, he didn't really putt very well at all. Actually, kind of opened up the door on Sunday to let other folks in. I don't remember what he shot, maybe 1 or 2 under on Sunday, but neither here or there. I'm just saying the guy won this event with a C+ game. And so that's what's going to be very difficult as we talk through this is, and the odds have got it right? He's less than 3 to 1 to bet, because if Jon Rahm comes out with his B game, it's going to take some of these guys their A++ game to beat Jon Rahm. The funny thing is we don't get information from the superintendent. This is kind of rare, but on this course, usually I get like a superintendent list of all the information, but over time I've been able to extract information enough to, and I'm not too worried about it, but what I could see from a green size, they are over, large, again, a little bit like I would look at Kapalua, where they played a tournament of champions in Hawaii. Fairways are very large, and then I've got a ton of visuals that we're going to look at so you get a better understanding, but the fairways are large, and there is trouble out here, but you have to hit it really, really wayward to get in that trouble. There's a ton of sand. They got a ton of this waste areas that we'll look at. I just put 50 plus. But really, it's not hard to get out of what I've seen because, there's not a lot of fluffy uphill sand. There's not a ton of pop bunkers. So I really don't feel like sand is a huge defense. I actually went through, I think this was last year, water comes into play on 14 holes. And I was trying to look at the water and figure out, not like it's in front of the tee, but it's around the green. It's off the fairway. But again, it's pretty spread out. I mean, you have more chances of getting into the water around the green than you really do on a drive, again, unless you go wayward quite a bit. And these greens are really slow and pretty flat. I mean, there's some undulation as on all greens, but compared to a PGA Tour, and again, you got to remember this is a resort course, it's not nuts. It's a pretty, I would say, simpler greens to putt. And also, what I've noticed is some of the guys that are not very good at putting typically do a little better on these past palm slower greens because they can be more aggressive. There's not as much break, and they're also not as worried that if they miss it, that they're going to go by 6-7 feet, that, they go by a couple feet. So again, you can see guys that have done well on these past palm greens in the past aren't always the best putters, but can do well here. Of course, defense we talked about. I mean, really the only defense, again, a lot like Kapalua, and why I keep using it, because that's a resort course. It's in Hawaii. It's got the wide fairways. It's, 7,600 yards. Par 73, though, is that the only defense is the wind, to be honest. And I've looked at the actual projections of what's going on with the weather. And right now, it doesn't look like wind's going to be a factor at all. So, when John shot the 17 under last year, if you, again, go back and watch some of that, there was pretty constant wind the whole time. And then, of course, stronger winds. They were dealing with some wind. Right now, it's stating that will not be the case. So this could, not going to be like, again, tournament of champions 33 under like Cam Smith, but I think it could get into the mid 20s if they do not get any wind. I mean, the ultimate is what we're looking for is bombers, and the fairways and reg is not as important. I mean, it's, again, you want to keep it in play, but the rough that you see here, I think, is somewhere less than 2 inches. And again, it's that past palm, so it sits up. So there's no issues unless, you get behind a tree or something like that, and we'll look at all the visuals. And also, like I said, I mean, vacation swing courses, from a comp course side does make sense because, hey, it's dealing with wind, you're dealing with past palm, and most of them are vacation courses. And it is very typical, similar playing fields that you see that play the vacation or the island swing. Okay, so just from a quick visual, you can kind of understand, and we're going to go into quite a, some of these holes a little more so you get a better view. But you can see one can be a problem. What I kind of noticed is the guys that hit the fade, which is quite a few of these guys, hence John Rahm. If you could set it over here and then fade it back to the fairway, you kind of are taking, the water out. Where if you hit the draw, you got to trust the draw, the hook, that if you put it over the water, it's going to come back. And if it doesn't, you could be in problems. So was a pretty tough hole. I think 18 plays pretty tough. But we'll go through the scorecard and the handicaps for you. And there is, I think, from a showdown perspective, an advantage. So we'll talk about that. But you can see, a lot of water. There's a lot of this where you see this brown is this kind of sand waste area, but it's very tight. It's like a fairway the way it's packed. So you don't have any issues coming out of there. All right. So I pulled these from, I mentioned from last year looking in. I just thought, here's number one, and you get a better visual. So of course, got some trees. You're going to see that. And then there's the green somewhere over in this area. But of course, if you hit the fade, you aim it at these traps, let it fade back. No issues there. But then here's that kind of wasteland area. Again, the fade, I think, comes into play. So again, you can aim it down this dirt area, the wasteland, and let it fade back to the green. This one here, you can see Mr. Rahm went a little right. That's number 2. And then we're not going to show you every hole, but then here's 6. Again, where water's on the left side. And again, if it's, me, if I'm Rahm, I'm aiming over this trap and letting it fade back. Again, if you hit a draw, it's not a problem either. You're pretty safe to hit it over here and let it come back. But again, just to give you some visuals, if you didn't get to watch this last year, again, funny enough, this course, again, sets again to the fade. Now, you do have water on the right side, and I believe this is hole number 10. Again, like I said, not a worry. There's water here, but if you're a PGA guy and you put it in there, you probably won't be on the PGA very long. Again, water on the left, and this is number 15. Pretty decent sized par 4. But again, the fade is definitely something that works a lot better. You can, no issues if it's fading back. And these guys, I kind of remember this hole. Typically, their landing spot was just right of this trap here. So I think what they were pretty much doing is aiming it right at this trap and then just letting it kind of fade off it. Again, a fade would work well here. If you're aiming at these traps, let it fade back, and then you can kind of see the bend. This is actually, I think it's the longest par 4, 504 on here. But again, what I'm showing here is just this kind of wasteland. But man, a lot of room to miss it. I mean, yes, there's trees, but you have to, like I said, you have to go really, really far off. Okay, let's jump into the scorecard. The only thing I'm going to highlight on here is there's some, long par 4s. There's some long par 6s. It's a pretty standard for a par 71. I believe you've got, the only thing that's different is you have 5 par 3s, and let me just make sure that is correct. We got one at 200, one at 174, one at 195, one at 170. Yeah, that's the difference. So 9 par 4s, you got 5 par 3s, and you got 4 par 5s. And there's one at 600. I'm just looking at the par 5s real quick. That's really it. Oh, I'm sorry, 2. So this would be the hardest one, I guess, in the length. But when you start to break this down and look at the yardage, you've got a lot of long and also past pollen in this area. Typically, it's got moisture. So what does that mean? Like when we see the Florida swing, usually it's pretty dry and the ball runs out. Here is pretty much wherever you carry that drive, that's what you're getting. So that's why distance off the tee is so such an advantage here. Also, you don't have a disadvantage if you're not accurate because the fairways are huge. There's really no rough to speak of. And if you do get into that dirt waste area, it's like being in the fairway. It's no worse, honestly, almost than being in the fairway, especially if you're just used to it, you hit quite a few shots out of that. Now, I mentioned, I think there's an advantage here if you're playing showdown. And where I see it is if you go off the back here. So yes, you're going to tackle the toughest hole, number 10, playing at 475. But then you got this birdie streak, which you would either way. That's not a huge thing, but you got a chance. 12, 13, 14, there's going to be some scoring there. But what was unique was that you get this par 5, it varies the almost second easiest hole, chance to make an eagle. Definitely 52% of the guys last year made a birdie. And then you get over here and you've got this chance here on kind of number 1, which is the 10th ranked hole. It's 20% of the guys made birdies there, and it's not shown as the easiest, but you have this chance to kind of double up where you can see the front. If you go off there, you actually kind of have a tougher time with a 9th, a 1, and an 8th to kind of string that, of going from front to back. Instead of if you go off the back to front, you have a better chance for that consecutive birdie bonus. So why is that important if you don't know? Because if you get 3 birdies in a row, you get, I believe, an extra, definitely 5 points For a birdie is what, 5.7, so yeah, you get an extra 5 points on your score, and it's huge. So that's note to self. I checked, all the yardages are the same, nothing stands out, but that is the official scorecard, so everything from the year prior is right on task. Okay, so I'll kind of change this. This is what now I'm going to be referring to as the player profile of what we're looking at. Yes, it is how I'm going to build the custom stat model that I'm using, but the stroke gain analysis ranking for me, I think you probably understood this, driving distance. And yes, I'm putting in fairways, but it's not a must. It's more important the weight will be on the driving distance. Approach and ball striking, you could flip these either way. I mean, all it's doing is taking off the tee and approach and combining it. That's ball striking, but approach is always key. Putting, it does show up here, right? The guys that did well, and I'm going to show that last year, you still need to make putts. That's no shocker, but I think it's easier to do it here. The proximity to pin that I've never seen, maybe at Kapalua, but this proximity of 200 plus shows up like crazy. I think it was almost like, I should have probably put that in there, but I think it was like 30% of the shots because you have these long par fours. Also, you have guys going for the par fives. You also got these longer par threes out of it, which I put that into. There's 5 of them, as mentioned, that fall between this 175, actually 200 plus. I think there's one around 220. And then you got to make birdies. And I told you guys, even though last year it wasn't a birdie fest, because I look at a birdie fest, anything 20 under or over. I think this year we're looking probably more in the range of, like I said, somewhere in the lower mid 20s is where this will end. So that's the guys that I'm going to be focusing on and building that I bet. And it was kind of funny. I knew this course. So of course, as soon as finally they got the betting out on Monday morning, I started hitting it right away. And I think a lot of people did. And Draftkings Sportsbook actually shut down the betting from a outright winner perspective or top 5, top 10. It was kind of odd that, it came out, people started betting on it, and then they pulled it away for a little while to readjust, which, again, I just feel like the casinos and of course, they're not in it to lose money, but man, I think it's been such a cash cow, the golf this year, because it's been best case scenario for these guys. I don't know how many people bet on Nick Hardy and any of they did. They were still an upper tier team. I think they were 20-1 to win or something like that, 25-1 comparative to the other teams that were out there. A lot like I talked about for the Zurich from a betting side is where I was going with all this. Is of course if Jon Rahm doesn't win, I again think it kind of opens up to a long shot pulling this thing out. So, and we'll talk more about that. All right, so now to get into custom stat models, take that player profile, the stroke gain analysis, and let's put that into actual models and get you guys some information. And as always, I start out with recent form, and I actually did it a couple different ways for you guys. Last 6 tournaments or 24 rounds, I'm going to show you that. And then I'm going to show you even more recent data, the last 3 tournaments. Now you got to remember, right, we've had quite a few tournaments that has not have stroke gain data, like the match play, like the Masters, like the Zurich. So some of this data is going to be a little older. When I say that, like, I don't know, it could touch back to the Florida swing, but I mean, it's still as recent as we have. Okay, so we go through this just real quick. So you see the weighting. I've got driving distance at 20%, fairways gained at 10, ball striking at 20, approach at 20, putting, proximity from 200 out at 15, birdies at 10. So you can get an understanding. It's all pretty much, the tee to green. I have nothing around the green because, again, literally you'll see in the past stats that you don't have to have a short game here because also the greens are very large and it's very easy to chip from my perspective. All right, so if you want to know who led, with no shocker, Jon Rahm, as I mentioned, under 3-1. And again, you'll see all the odds here. The odds that you're seeing is from Draftkings Sportsbook, just so you know. And I don't know how update these are because I think this was pulled from yesterday. But yeah, it should be pretty similar. You got Gary Woodland comes in number 2. You got Tony Finau. Wyndham Clark, I guess I mentioned, had a really nice showing. Of course, at the Zurich, has had a really nice year. And I think, you could see, I think he came out at 22-1. I did not bet him. It is really hard to bet Wyndham Clark, who still does not have a win on the PGA Tour yet. Had a really good chance, but has had a lot of good history on these kind of courses. Some of his best finishes have been on the vacation swing, and I'll jump into that when we go through the player analysis. Will Gordon, you got Matthias Schmid, and not to be confused with Matty Schmidt. So you got Matthias Schmid and Matty Schmidt, which I screw those up all the time. Even when I bet on this, I actually messed them up, and it is what it is. But somehow I have quite a bit of money on Matthias. So if for some odd reason that guy pulls it out, it'll be shocking. Of course, Luke List, great ball striker. Actually, this kind of fits him well. Right, his only win was at the Farmers on POA, but it's still pretty good odds for a Luke List. You got Kevin Roy, who's got crazy distance off the tee. Also has had some showings. Brandon Wu had a good showing here last year. Ben Martin, Matty Wallace, right, got his win at Corrales. Not a bad bet. That was just recent and also a great comparable course. You got Dylan Rue, Ricky Bobby Shelton, Nate Lashley, who I will show has also had a lot of success on these type courses and events. And then you got also the bomber Joseph Bramlett, which are all, some of these are guys that I bet that I'll get into on the betting card. And then if you want to see even more recent forms, I just pulled in the last 12 rounds. It doesn't change a lot, but you get Rahm, Woodland, Finau, Kevin Roy. Again, it's got crazy distance off the tee. Patrick Rogers, right, had the chance to win, and I'm going to blank the previous before the Zurich, and then fell apart on Sunday. Lee Hodges, Ches Reavie, Ben Martin. Ben Martin's been playing good. Akshay, I actually have a little breakdown on him that we're going to talk about from a betting side. Aaron Rye, Michael Kim, MJ Duffy. It's funny, it doesn't matter, but on the announcements at the Zurich, they messed, I think they call him DeFell or something like that. It wasn't even close. I messed his name up too, but it was not even close. There, Wyndham Clark falls down a little bit. Stefan Jaeger, Eric Holt, and Matthias Schmid is your guys. And again, this is actually that was 16 guys right there. So top 16. I threw that in because we did have a couple withdrawals, and I don't know if they came in here. But Ryan Brim withdrew. Of course, I mentioned Davis Riley and also Nick Hardy have withdrawn from the tournament at this point, which Ryan Brim is kind of a bummer because, right, I mean, his one win was what, the Puerto Rico Open, I believe it was. Like I said, they all kind of seem the same. He's got crazy distance. Now, he was a super long shot, but kind of a fun one to bet. All right, so we do have some history at Vidanta, and just to give you an understanding, I mentioned right off the bat, off the tee shows, I mean, not one red box for the guys in the top 10. That's very rare that you'll see that. I mean, there's certain courses that will bring that out. Of course, approach, it's kind of like most of it you need approach, right? I mean, there's a couple of guys like Cameron Champ. This is actually, I think, the last tournament that he literally, I think he had a 14th and a 6th over like the last 50 tournaments he's played in. And this is one of them, which again, just strikes out that, distance is a huge factor. Not being good around the greens is another one. And even putting, right? I mean, that's the two things that Champ, and even his irons have been pretty bad. But man, he got it done with actually the putter and also off the tee. And that's the other thing I would say. I mean, you still need to putt. You're going to see this, except for Tony Finau, who lost 2 strokes, did everything else really well. And what, Tony, he was going to show up here, and he's the other one. I mean, literally, it's, it is John Rahm and Tony's tournament to win. And then, but if those guys struggle, then watch out. It kind of opens the door for a lot of guys. So that's just a little bit more validation of what you need to do here at Vidanta. Okay, so with all that said, you're probably asking, just like myself, well, hey, the first thing I want to know is who's the bombers out of this list, and I'm going to let you know, which some of these guys you might have already known, but maybe some you don't, because we have quite a few Korn Ferry guys that are new, that graduated, that are in this tournament. One of them would be Brandon Matthews, who's actually had a win on some similar type courses and grasses. We'll talk about in the Korn Ferry. If I remember, I'll click on them, but just have that note. I think it was the Abaco, which was in Bogota, Colombia. I don't have confirmation that was past Palm, but it was over 7,400 yards. It is kind of in that, I don't know, I'd put it as kind of a resorty area. You got Cameron Champ, who comes in second. There's that Matthias Schmid, Kyle Westmoreland, Trevor Cohn, Benoit Ann, Ryan Brim, Grayson Murray, Luke List, John Rahm, Gary Woodland, Vincent Norman, Carl Yoon, Brent Grant, and Will Gordon. I've talked about some of these guys like Brent Grant. Where's Roy? He should be on here. It's kind of shocking that he did not pop on here, but the guy's got, maybe it's just because over the last 24 rounds. So again, this is taking distance over the last 6 tournaments they played, but don't worry, Kevin Roy's got plenty bit of distance. And again, that's just focusing on bombers. If you are putting a bomber lineup together and you want to know some of those guys, I mentioned Ryan Brim's not in there, but Grayson Murray, which, I bet him. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I think I got him at 400 or 500 to 1. Purely, he didn't have a bad at all, Zurich, right? He showed up, and he's also had some good showings on also vacation swings, just side note. And he's under, I think, just past, either past champion, so he's only getting a few starts. So when that guy gets in a tournament, you can imagine he wants to do well to get his card back. Okay, ball strikers. So these are, of course, this is taking in the off the tee and the approach. You're going to notice the row right here, top 15 guys. Again, this is looking at past 24 rounds of golf they played or 6 tournaments. And again, no shocker, a lot of these guys we've been talking about: Rom, Finau, Woodland, List, Clark, Benny Martin, Aaron Rye, Cameron Percy, Brendan Wu, Jaeger, Smalley, Gordon, Ryan Gerard, who's made 4 out of his last 5 cuts, showed up at the Honda as a Monday qualifier. And I also believe he did get temporary status because of his recent finishes. Ches Reavie and Sadoshi Gadire. So just because I say they're good ball strikers, funny enough, on this list doesn't mean they're long off the tee. It means they do very well hitting fairways and greens. And like Ches, Satoshi, they are not long. They're accurate, but they're not long. I put Alex Smalley also in that bucket. He's not very long. Aaron Rye. So, right, the courses when we were playing like the tighter RBC Heritage, to be specific, like the Aaron Ryes and the Ches Reavies and the Sadoshis are going to manage that. I think but the guys with distance, do not get it wrong, we'll have an advantage at this course. So just keep that in mind. And then if you're curious, just looking at guys that are really good with irons. So again, why I do this is sometimes you want to build lineups like the bomber lineup, the guys who are really good with the irons, the ball striking lineup. Sometimes you want the good short game putter guys, which is not what you need here. And I will show you who's done well putting on past palms, so you know that. But putting an iron lineup together is never a bad idea. And then these same guys kind of stay up this top 4: Rom, Finau, Clark, Woodland. There's Kevin Roy. And let me go look at driving distance. We're going to click on Kevin Roy because what I always thought, and maybe I'm wrong, that his distance off the tee is pretty good. But maybe I'm confusing him with Grant. That could be the case. Aaron Rye, Ricky Bobby Shelton, Matty Wallace, Benny Martin, who's been playing really good golf. Nate Lashley, keep that guy. Also, at a betting perspective, this guy he had a good showing here last year and also does well on past palm and these vacation swings. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is you'll notice a lot of the guys at the top of the leaderboard have like a low piercing ball flight, which even a Gary Woodland would fit into that. Who, when they hit the ball, it's not like instantly up in the air. It's kind of a low and gains and rises. It used to be what they called the old PGA preferred tee flight, where what guys used to want was the ball to start low, it would climb, and then it would kind of arc and down, and you would get more roll that way. And then through all the technology, they started to figure out, sooner you get in the air and spin rate and all that stuff. But, the Cameron Champs, that's his ball flight. Nate Lashley, that's his ball flight. So if the wind does pick up, that's why those ball flights will tend to be better than the guys like I think of Rory, who his T-ball, it goes forever, but it gets up very quickly. Got Piercy, EVR, Eric Van Ruin, Alex Noren, Brandon Rue, Ryan Gerard. These are guys who have been leading the field best on approach over the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds. Now, I mentioned that proximity from 200 plus is a very crucial approach stat. It's the number one, most shots coming in. And if you're curious who does that well, again, and no shocker, Rom's up there, Woodland. Tommy Gainey, I don't know where he ended up, and I guess he's in this field, but he just almost won a Corn Ferry event. I don't know where he ended up, but he was top 5. So 2 gloves, if he is still in this event. Right now it doesn't say. Could be very sneaky to look at down and probably bare minimum price tag. So just saying recent form, Tommy 2 gloves, Gainey. You can see also, I don't know. No, I would not. 2001 is for you guys. For me, it's interesting to throw $1 on it, but I'll have to look at that. I didn't recognize him, funny enough, and everything else I did, but he is showing up here. Ricky Bobby Shelton, Kevin Roy, Mateus Schmid, Satoshi, Bent Grant, Ben Taylor, Dylan Wu, Will Gordon, Augusta Munoz, Nate Lashley, Charlie Hoffman, and Luke List. And again, what this is showing you is who's the guys that are very elite from this 200 plus, which a ton of shots are coming in from that distance. Okay, moving on. Guys that are really good putters on past palm. That is what I'm showing you here. And again, I'm pulling up the past 6 tournaments or 24 rounds. Now, you got to remember that these guys do not putt on past palm very often. So some of this data could be past, but at least it gives you an understanding of who's had success in the past putting on this stuff. And funny enough, number 1 comes out Scotty Brown, Hammer and Hank Laboda, Cameron Champ, Martin Trainer, Kelly Kraft, Brandon Wu, who is I think he's an excellent ball striker, but typically he's pretty bad around the greens and putting. But he showed up here last year, which again reinforces that you don't have to be good around the greens. And for whatever reason, if they're typically a bad putter on very fast lightning greens, maybe the slow ones suit them better. There's Nate Lashley again comes up. This Oliveira Ortiz, I'm guessing on the Latam Tour, or he's got a sponsor exemption. Patrick Rogers, Wesley Bryant, Bill Haas, Satoshi, Aaron Badley, Ches Reavie, Richard Wawrinski. There's my buddy that typically I always bet, but not on him this week because his skill set does not fit this at all. And then Jonathan Bird. Now, again, this, sometimes I think this makes sense. For me, all this is telling you guys, if you see somebody that you're interested in, like a Cameron Champ, a Brandon Wu, maybe even Nate Lashley, Patrick Rogers, like guys that you know have distance off the tee, which you can kind of see that right here too, which has already been pulled, and guys that are really good putters on this. I mean, you could also kind of build a lineup there. So, you know, Champ would be one right off the bat. Wu, as I mentioned, Patrick Rogers. I guess Richie actually out of this has a little more pop in his bat than I ever give him respect for. So could also be another stretch. All right, comp course is pretty simple, right? I mean, even though we don't see a lot of this, that have, you know, but like if we want to look at the resorty, windy, past Ptolemy, like we have like a whole, I guess, like a Florida swing, I call it the vacation swing. And of course, we had now the Mexico Open that goes right in here, but the Puerto Rico Open and Corrales would be the best fits from everything from a distance, from past Palm. These would be the best two comp courses. Now, if you want to stretch it and open up Bermuda greens and still keep the island feel, of course, we've got the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, Mayakoba Golf Classic, which has also always been known as the OHL, and Century Tournament of Champions. Now, this one's a little unique. I put it in here because we have some guys, right, that have won tournaments and have played in that. And I think the course plays a lot like what we're going to see. I think Kapalua is one of the easiest courses, but it's also very undulated where this course does not have the up and down hills. But again, I think it's worth bringing in. So if you want to know against comp courses, who rates out the best, and again, this would be actually top 16 guys, Brandon Wu comes up number one. So it shows you in a lot of these, he's done very well. John Rahm, number two, Woodland, Smalley, Lipsky, Dougie Gim, Jimmy Walker, and Tony Finau, Patrick Rogers, and Jimmy Walker, showed up, had a chance to win. I guess it was RBC. Is that right? He fell apart, I think, on Sunday. Lucas Glover, Novak, Lanto Griffin, McGirt, my buddy Emiliano Grillo, Jonathan Bird, and Benny Martin are your top 16 guys on the comp courses. And then what I wanted to do, because some of these places do not provide stroke gain data. So what you saw there was stroke gain data. So that would have pulled in probably Tournament of Champions and Mayakoba. I believe we get stroke gain data for, but like Puerto Rico, Corrales, and Bermuda, we don't. Oh, and also Vidanta, you do get stroke gain data there. But the other three, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and Corrales, we don't get stroke gain data. But we do get what I call old stroke gain data, which would be like fairway and reg, green and reg, birdies, pars, bogey avoidance. Like that was the old school way of kind of figuring out what these guys were doing before stroke gain data was technically put into effect by the PGA. And so if you want to know who's done well from that perspective, because it might, you know, it kind of, I think, gives a different look, because a lot of these guys who don't play like the Tournament of Champions, they get kind of brought more in the forefront. And Alex Smalley, Brandon Wu, I told you guys, Adam Long, whenever you get on these type of courses, he's had a very good track record. Now, I didn't bet Adam Long, and I'm not really picking him because he doesn't have distance. Even though his last name is Long, he is not long off the tee. But somehow the guy loves past Palm. He loves being on ocean courses and just navigates his way around. John Rahm, Akshay Bhatia, I told you we're going to have quite a bit of discussion on him from a betting side and from a pick side. Nate Lashley, Gary Woodland, Mateus Schwab, Lipsky, Mav McNeely. Mav, one thing he does have is distance and no accuracy, but it's just been putting. That's a tough one for me. I'm not on him. I didn't bet him, but just side note, he does have some skill sets that make sense here. It's just what can the irons do would be the ones. What's this green and reg? So yeah, 52. Nicholas, he actually won the Puerto Rico or the Corrales. I get them all. Like I said, I mix those two up. He just won there. This guy is very hit or miss. I almost put him in the old Siwoo Kim, very like either he wins or he miscuts. So kind of an interesting bet, and also play now maybe more of a top 10 kind of thing from a betting side. Ben Martin, Doug Gim, Patrick Rogers, and Nikolai Horgaard, who also I think is a great fit for this course. You can see his fairway's gaining great, but he's got crazy distance, and you got to watch a little bit more probably of him if you watch the Zurich. Okay, so let's real quick talk about who am I betting on in my betting card and give you some ideas. And like I said, I'm going to dive into at least one of these guys a lot deeper. And you can kind of see who they rank against my model. So that's a little bit of it, but also just guys that I'm interested in. Some of them fit the model that I'm looking at. Maybe some aren't exact fits. But I mentioned Kevin Roy. Like I said, he does a lot of things good, ball striking approach, that proximity of birdies. I think he's somewhere around 300, 250 to 1. So if you're interested, definitely a long shot. Actually, I'm going to talk a little more about, but I bet him. He was one of the first bets that I made. And then, of course, EVR, Eric Van Ruin. He's not super long off the tee, but man, the guy, I've just watched him so many times just get on in Fuego. And he's also had some opportunities at these type of tracks. Same with Griot. Typically, that's almost like a FOMO bet for me. Still waiting for his second win. Literally got his first win like first week on the PGA Tour. Hasn't done anything since, but it all makes sense here. And he has done well in these type of events. We got the Nikolai Horgaard, who funny enough, they played quite a few of these kind of courses on the European Tour. The winds aren't going to be, like I said, at least what it's stating. But if it does get windy, I think he's used to dealing with that. Brandon Matthews, of course, just elite on distance, and also his previous win on the Corn Ferry, I should say, his one win or win on the Corn Ferry not too long ago was in a similar type of course. Brandon Wu, I mean, you already saw, has a ton of good showings on these type of events. Joseph Bramlett, I actually didn't break down his Corn Ferry, but I just know his skill set. Of course, he's super long off the tee and has been doing better. Garrick Higo has won both his events on the DP World Tour. Was on 2 vacation courses, and now I'm just going to forget the Canary Islands. Maybe doesn't matter. They're on island courses, and then of course he won the Palmetto. You got Grayson Murray again. Just some of these guys have one elite thing that you need for this course, and that's distance. Cameron Champ fits right into that mold, and Nicholas Chevarria actually kind of has a mix, and of course he just won on a very similar kind of event again, but Jon Rahm was not in the tournament. Okay, so let's talk a little more about Akshay and why you might want to think about throwing a couple dollars on him. He's been kind of around the 100 to 1. I saw him I think he came out at 90 to 1, and then now he's at 100 to 1. So not a ton of action must be getting on him, but I think you can find him all the way up to like 130, 150. And so his one win that actually helped him get back to the PGA, well, helped him get on the PGA Tour, I should say, not back, was actually in the Bahamas at the Great Azuma Classic. Here you'll see. And it's a long course. They had some pretty tough conditions. You can see he shot 1,400 to win, past palm greens. So everything very similar. You can also see Carl Yoon came in third. So that's one of his areas. And then if we want to look at where's his best finishes been on the PGA Tour, right off the bat, I just mentioned, you can see here the Great Exuma. But of course, he had a chance to win the Puerto Rico. He was trying to catch Chevarria, that he came in second. And then, of course, the Butterfield and then Corrales. And this was literally his best finishes, completely Corn Ferry and the PGA over the last, top 5. So if the guy is ever going to have a chance to win, now, honestly, a top 10 bet probably would be the best way to go, or a top 5. But if you want, the 100 plus odds, then, bet him outright to win. And if somehow, again, as I mentioned, Jon Rahm pulls out of the event, gets hurt, just has an off week, which it can happen, then you have an opening. Okay, let's go jump over to Fantasy National. Let's do some deep dive analysis on the players. I'm going to give you my picks. We're also going to do ownership projections and weather. I don't think I stated that, so we'll go through all that, and then I'll get you guys out of here. Okay, I've hopped over to Fantasy National, and as always, if you're doing any betting or DFS and want to do your own analysis, I highly recommend this tool for golf. It is the best I've seen out there. And to give you a little quick background on what you're looking at here, if it's new to you, I'm going to be looking at the last 24 rounds of golf or 6 tournaments these guys have played. That's where the data is coming from. You have all these filters here, but I'm not using any. I've already done a ton of pre-work to get us to this point. I've got 24 guys identified, and if you see them highlighted in green, like Jon Rahm, yes, that is one guy that I'm recommending or that I am playing in my player pool. And so I want to clarify that. At the end, I will summarize my top, 24 picks is what I'm, kind of looking at here. Usually I try to keep it to 20, but, if I see some extra guys I think I need to call out and that I'm going to play, I want you guys to also know that. All right, so right here off the bat, you're going to see I've got a mini model, and if you want to understand the weighting, you can see that right here. I got driving distance at almost 30%, ball striking at 24, approach at 24, and then the proximity 200 plus and putting at 11. So the weighting, again, is on these top 3 stroke gain categories: distance, ball striking, approach. You also see some things here where you got salary, projected ownership, which we're going to go into. So this number sometimes does not reflect what is actually predicted, so don't really hold a lot of weight on that. You can see where this model is being ranked off that, so you can see that. And then another thing you see is birdies gained over the past 24 rounds. And yes, you want the guys with the big green arc like Jon Rahm. And then you also got recent results, which shows their last 5 finishes and their tournament history at this event. And we, of course, have one event played here. Okay, with that said, you got some decisions. I mean, they really priced up Rahm, which, I think it makes total sense at 12,000. I mean, it is kind of his tournament to lose against this field. Really, I guess the next would be, Tony Finau, that from a perspective of historically what they've done in their career and what their game type is. So, no shocker, that would be your decision, but I cannot tell you not to play Jon Rahm. I'm going to play Jon Rahm. It's not going to shock me if he's literally owned, I don't know, 40% maybe in the big game. Now, you also have that if he does not have a good event, which of course I think a lot of us will build lineups that does not have Jon Rahm in it, because you can do a lot more with those lineups. And there's a possibility if John wins this thing and you don't have him in your lineup, but you have 6 guys that, of course, come right under him, maybe you could still win that thing. It's all depending. Might be a little tricky, but it could, I guess, technically happen. And if from that decision, I will actually want to click on salary. Let me get this. See, okay, that's what I want to see. Okay. So I already mentioned one side note is Davis Riley is out of this field, so you don't have to worry about paying $9,800 for him. So really the top 2 guys, you got to make a decision between Jon Rahm and Tony Finau. And for the, it's why they made it a $1,300 difference, because there is a bit of difference there. But still, for the price tag, if I'm going to plug in someone at that, 11,000 or 12,000, I'm going to play Jon Rahm. I don't think I need to sell you. If you watched any golf, you know how good Jon Rahm and is got now 4 wins this year. Is it 5? It's hard to keep up with what this guy's been doing. So, of course, he won the Masters, the Genesis, the Amex, the Century Tournament of Champions. So that, I guess he's got 4, but in a pretty short time period, right? I mean, technically that's within 4 months. So he's like winning a tournament, and some of these are, pretty, like the Century Tournament. Yeah, it's a small field, but it's pretty much the best of the best. The Genesis elevated, and the Masters, and then the Amex will be the one that's kind of like, and you can see he actually lost 2.2 strokes, but still won that tournament. Tony Finau, I don't want to say it did, but compared to what he was doing in the fall, almost similar to what Jon Rahm did, right? Winning, 3 tournaments in a very short time frame. Let's go look at Tony just so you can also see. So yeah, at the kind of late summer, early fall, right? He won the 3M, the Rocket, like back to back, and literally back to back, which is so rare. And then the Houston Open. And of course, his first win, which, a lot of people, were like after he won the Puerto Rico Open, which, as I mentioned, great comparable course. Really didn't have another win until the Northern Trust. And the Northern Trust, that was a Liberty National. Okay, just want to make sure. Oops. So I think that's enough on Tony. I think you also know kind of his game, but his record hasn't been as good. Oh, I know I wanted to look at for you too. You just look. So one time, I want to see what he's been doing with the putter. So that's kind of what's changed here, I'd say, as of late, where he was gaining, which was very unique for Tony, right? Gaining, I mean, he gained 8 strokes when he won the Houston with the putter, but gaining on the field where, we've always said if you had a neutral putter with Tony, he had a chance to possibly win. But if he actually gains, then watch out. And you can see at the RBC, not the greatest off the tee. Did well with the irons. And that's another thing. He's been very strong with the irons. Off the tee, he's not hitting as far, but he doesn't need to be, distance-wise, super long. He can be, but, it's more about accuracy on quite a few of these courses that he played here. All right, so that's my decision. I mean, I'm not saying don't play Tony. I think you could plug or play either of those guys, but again, for the price tag, I'm going to save $1,000, and I'm actually going to go to Wyndham Clark would be my next guy in. So I'll start builds with Wyndham. Of course, you can start builds with John. It's a lot more tougher. But also even Gary Woodland at 96, I don't think it's a bad play. I have a hard time with Gary now. I feel like let's go look at Gary just real quick. I just want to see what he's been, because I feel like his putter has been actually, I mean, maybe I'm thinking of the RBC where he gained 4 strokes, but this is typically what we get out of Gary, right, is some big issues with the putter. But remember, I mentioned that past Palm greens, typically bad putters typically can do a little better there. So not a ton of past Palm experience for him, but I think it all makes sense. But man, 9,600, again, it is his field, but there's other guys I'd rather play. So also you see his, recent finishes. He did have a T24 here last year, but kind of diving into the top guys. Out of them, I'm more excited about Wyndham, and of course, everybody with Jon Rahm. Let's go. So Wyndham Clark did not have the greatest showing here last year. I actually kind of forgot about that. Made the cut, but of course he's been playing great. You saw what he did at Zurich, had a chance to win that thing. And if we go look at where he's had his best finishes, so right, his other chance to get his first win was at the Bermuda. I remember that very well. Also kind of fell back on Sunday. He's done well at the Corrales, which is a great comp course at a 6. That's the most recent, just a couple weeks ago. And let's see here, the Puerto Rico back in 2019. I think that's about Corrales, a 22nd. So, I mean, the guy's done well on these events. Again, the field is typically weaker, but these kind of courses typically fit his kind of game, with that advantage off the tee. So that's kind of where I'm leaning up top. Also, like Nikolai Horgaard, I'm going to go there. I mean, you can see driving distance out of this field over the last 24 rounds. He's number 1. That's a very elite talent. Also, I feel like he's played a lot of some of these similar tracks. You can see at Corrales, he had a chance to win. He came in 2nd. So a lot of good feelings. And of course, I think he played pretty well. It was one of my picks. Actually, I take that back. I don't think I took Nikolai, and who was he with? Picture in his face, but I can't think of his name right now. His other European counterpart, Olesen. I think it was Olesen. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But I like Nikolai. I mean, if I had to pick between, of course, Mav and Nikolai, I will take him. Now, again, where Mav has been just nuts with the putter, but that's all he's really been doing. As you see, everything else has been pretty bad. But Mav McNeely also can bang it out there. I mean, driving distance on average 305. I just want to see, because I really didn't even like give Mav a consideration, to be honest. So there's a worldwide tech at my Coba. It's what, El Camaleon, if I believe right? Yeah. But that's a shorter track. Yeah. Anyways, I would rather go with Nikolai, and we don't have a ton of data on him, right? I mean, of course, he's just kind of making that transition. I also believe, like him and Gerard, I believe, have gotten temporary status. Maybe that Corrales got him that temporary PGA status. So we're going to be seeing, of course, he's got the twin brother, Rasmus Horgaard, who's still around the DP World Tour. All right, then my buddy Patrick Rogers, right? I mean, you guys have given me some flack where I just keep waiting, but I mean, hey, he had a good chance at Valero. Also looked good at the RBC. Had a good showing here last year, and his game fits here. I mean, typically, he's got distance, great ball striker, good from this distance out. It's typically the putter that will let him down. And let's go look at Patrick really quick. I just want to see, or let you guys kind of see. Apologize. I always got to kind of do this re-click because for some reason it's not pulling up. But had a chance to win his first tournament at Bermuda a couple times. Now those are Bermuda greens, but I also feel like very good comp course from how it plays, the field. Trying to see, that's last year. There's OHL. That's a while ago. There's Corrales at 11th. OHL. So he's had some good showings on these kind of events. So I like Patrick Rogers. Taylor Pendrith, I mean, the guy does bomb it, but again, for that price tag, I'd rather play Rogers, Benoit. And I actually saw someone tweet out where, I'm not really sure what this meant, but that they tried to bet on Benoit and it kind of capped it out at $31 or something like that. And I just told the guy literally like, hey, dude, you saved money. And I think it's a good fit for Benoit, right? He had a hole in one on, I think it was hole number 7 here last year, I think first round. And so did Scott Gudacheski, who actually just won on the Corn Ferry Tour, which was kind of crazy. They both hold on the same day, had a hole in one on par 3, I believe it's number 7. And so that kind of sticks out in my brain. And I think Benoit, like I said, great ball striker. He's got the distance. And he's not really that good of a putter and chipper, so it makes sense because I stated that. But man, his putting is typically so bad. Let's go look at Mr. Benoit for you real quick. But you can see crazy distance off the tee. Now that's kind of interesting. I did not know this, and I would have not known this, but he's actually been a little better around the greens and gaining with the putter. So maybe that's why that guy, funny enough, off the tees had more issues. But yeah, I think he's like 35-1, so that's hard to bet on Benoit. I mean, I don't know. It's actually, I did not even like look into that, so that must be why that guy was pretty pumped to make that bet. But I think there's some higher odd guys that I think have just as good a chance if, again, John Rahm or Tony Finau doesn't win this thing. All right, kind of moving through us, kind of pick up the pace here a little bit. These guys just don't fit the model. Alex Noren, for me, just not, driving distance. You'll just notice right off the bat. Aaron Rai, driving distance. More plotters for me. Bo Hosler, has distance, but I don't know. Like I said, he looked. I think a lot of people might maybe. I mean, right now projected ownership doesn't show it, but could be excited. What's funny about Bo Hosler, back to the Zurich real quick, the guy in a team event has never made the cut. So I think he played the Zurich at least twice before and never made a cut. I don't know if he played in the QBE. Maybe he did and missed the cut too. So just again, from a pairing, just never saw that. I mean, I like Wyndham Clark. He's playing great golf, but wasn't too excited about that part. Andrew Putnam, same thing. Just doesn't fit the mold that I'm looking for. Again, if I need some guy to be a tactician around a course, short game putting, that's Andrew Putnam. Funny enough, Benny Martin, I thought was more distance than that, and I'm still gonna pick him, but so he hits it almost 300. So I guess he would kind of fit in a little more, but I mean, he's gained quite a bit off the tee here, but of course that's hitting fairways. The guy's been playing great. I mean, yes, he didn't do what I was hoping at the RBC, which that should be a better fit, but you can see at the Corrales had a good showing. Let me see what else he's done on some of these vacation swings. And I mean, you got to remember, he's kind of just came to light. I mean, won the Shriners way back in 2014. Had a second at Corrales a year ago. Was his other best finish. He likes Corrales, and again, past Palm. So that was quite a bit of it why I'm pretty high on this guy. Been in great form. He missed the cut here last year, but everything else says that he should do well at this event. So we'll see how that goes. Grillo's kind of, I would say, more just my guy, and we're going to click on him. But I mean, he's at least had a good showing at the RBC. He's done well in these type of events. You know, it's got the distance, very accurate, great ball striker. I mean, you can see, funny enough, the one type surface that he gained has shown some positivity on is past Palm. Let's go take a look at this real quick so you can see. Now, again, always note that the fields are a little weaker in these, you know, kind of vacation swing. But he had a second at the Puerto Rico way back as 2015. But, you know, 2020 had a third. Corrales, he had a sixth a couple of years ago. OHL, he had an eighth. OHL a couple times at El Camaleon. Right? Always want to state. Yeah, El Camaleon, which is past Palm. So he's had a good showings there. So I'm on him. 8,500 is a little pricey. I think he was 55 to 1 coming out on the betting odds. So I did bet him. Alex Smalley, again, just not what I'm exactly looking for. Now, you know, he's not a terrible ball striker, but for some reason he's got put more in my head, funny enough, to be good around the greens, putting. Maybe I think of what he did at the Wyndham, but you can see he's up there in the ball striking, but it's just not the guy that I'm going to be on. Kirikigo, right? This is, again, I mentioned where he had his wins. I don't think it's going to pull up because, yeah. So Palmetto, I was blanking. Congaree. That was Bermuda. But if you know that course, it looks very kind of similar to this course. Also, like, I think at Kiawah Island, it reminds me a lot of that. So, but he had his 2 wins at, like I said, I keep wanting to say the Canary Islands. But, okay, so I was correct. It was the Canary Islands. He won. I actually has 3 wins on the Euro Tour, which I did not remember that. But anyway, so again, he's done very well in these type. He has distance off the tee. Also, you know, so I mentioned before, he can get a little wayward, but I love his putting on these type of greens. And hopefully his irons pick back up. I think Garrett Kago could be very live here. Brandon Wu, right, had a good showing here at a T2 last year, and this is a perfect fit. Again, great ball striker. Typically a little suspicious around the greens, but you can see it's at around 300, pretty accurate. His best putting surface is, you know, past Palm, funny enough. And then you can see here off the tee and approach is where he will gain. And typically the putter and around the green, funny enough, he gained, which I did not know, this 7 strokes with the putter at the Players. Let's take a look at where he's had his best finishes. So, of course, the Mexico Open, we just talked about the Puerto Rico. Both those are past Palm. So, yeah, I like his background, and everything that he does should fit well. All right, I'm going to fly through some of these other guys. I say Cam. Nope, not the type of guy. Stefan Jaeger was kind of interested in me. I was kind of back and forth on him. Had a pretty good showing here, so I don't think it's a bad play at all. So, would he get sprinkled in? Mark Hubbard, nope, not the guy that I'm kind of looking for, even though he had a good showing at the RBC. I think that's a better fit for him. Matty Walsh, right, just one Corrales. And the one guy, the guy can score. The putter, so he fits the perfect mold, right? I mean, drives the ball a long way, can get a little wayward, but he has the room here. Makes a lot of birdies, can make a lot of bogeys at time, but I think he's in good form. I'm actually shocked, I think, because he missed a cut at the RBC, that we're getting a little bit of a discount. So I think, honestly, my perspective is Matty Wallace at 8,100 is one of the better values on the board. I mean, if you kind of look at where he's, between Mark Hubbard and MJ Defoe or Duffy, Duffy's had good recent form, as in, he's making cuts, but he's never had a win on tour. Mark Hubbard's never had a win on tour. And I believe Matt Wallace is definitely won a couple times, I think almost like back to back over in the European tour. So from a pedigree and actually can win from a betting side, Matty Wallace is definitely better. Ricky Bobby was highlighted, Ricky Bobby Shelton, but I had to make some decisions. So he's not going to make my ultimate like top 20, but I think he's not a bad play. Lee Hodges, no thank you. Again, just doesn't really fit the mold of the guy that I'm looking for. So I'd rather play it. That price tag, 7,900, Will Gordon, right? He's just, again, perfect fit. Like, I know the guys that are awesome ball strikers and crappy putters because that's the guys that I typically like to play because I always think if that putter goes, he has just, finds lightning in a bottle for a weekend, they can win a tournament because they have everything else. It's like a little bit like Colin Morikawa, and I know you guys, some of you Morikawa guys are going to lose your mind when I say that, but honestly, if you start to look at that guy, he's starting to become a really good ball striker with a pretty bad putter. All right, Joseph Bramlett also fits. I mean, these guys, you see where they rank in my model, also have had success on these kind of events. Bramlett maybe a little more volatile lately. Let me go see for you guys. I think I already looked at this, but I want to check again. And let's just see how they've done in that kind of vacation swing. Let's see, 9th at the Puerto Rico. Also know a few of the tournaments for the Corn Ferry that would also be a pretty good fit, but I don't see any up there. Corrales, Puerto Rico again. So yeah, I like Bramlett. I think he could do very well here. And also I want to just go check Will Gordon. Let's go see again, 320 on average. Best finish actually was at El Camaleon, which is past Palm, at Lecombe Coast, but I don't think that is past Palm. There's the Palmetto. There's a Puerto Rico. There's that Great Exuma, so that's past Palm right here. So that's kind of interesting. But again, I like Will Gordon, and I think his game's been getting better and better. But you can see what's been holding those guys back is the putter, and I feel like these greens allow them. And you can say the exact same thing for Luke List. I'd be curious what his ownership comes in because, man, that guy's been playing pretty rough. Let's go take a look because I even feel like his iron game has been quite a bit off, and that's what's more got me a little nervous. Yeah, so Luke List, we always know typically bad around the greens, bad putter, but usually his irons, like if we just go back here, he's typically gains. But man, his irons have been pretty rough. He's still doing what he does off the tee, except for the Genesis where he went nuts. But man, did he lose a ton of strokes on the green around the putter. Let's go. I'm just curious because I don't know off the top of my head how well Luke has done in these kind of, again, I call it the vacation swing courses. All right. Maybe he has not played in a whole lot. Okay, here we go. Corrales, OHL. Corrales is at least 2020, not too long ago. Puerto Rico. Yeah, I mean, again, if you can make an argument, hey, if you're going to play Will Gordon and Joseph Bramlett, why are you not playing Luke List? And I think a little bit of it's just his irons, as you see here, have been a bit off. But, maybe I'll throw him in here or there. And also you can see he's only made one cut out of the last 5 tournaments. The only thing he's been doing is good off the tee. Everything else has been kind of falling apart. Chez Reavie, you can see he does, some things. He's had some decent finishes. I mean, he can be sneaky. I'm not saying that a Chez Reavie cannot do well at this course. If you hit 280, and you're hitting greens and you're making putts, like you're still going to do well here. It's just, I really do believe the distance it's going to show. And it showed last year that, and maybe there'll be a change. Maybe it'd be crazy if a lot of guys that don't hit the ball long off the tee all of a sudden end up at the top, leaderboard. But with 1 year of data and everything that we know about the type of the course, the wind, the past palm, all that stuff, you're going to need distance. Now you can see right here, Mr. Nate Lashley doesn't. So out of these guys, I'd rather play Nate. And the reason why, of course, is he's done and shown me he does well. So he had a T11 here last year. He had a T3 at the Puerto Rico. And if we go click at Mr. Nate Lashley, and also I know his ball flight. I've seen it live. And it is a low stinging ball flight. And again, if the wind picks up, there you go. But so the Puerto Rico, I just talked about, Corrales, even the Sony, but I don't think that's, Yes, it's Hawaii, but it is not the same type of course. And it's Bermuda, the Puerto Rico, the Mexican Open. We just looked at Corrales. I mean, this guy every time he gets on past palm, and it should show he gains quite a bit on past palm. Funny enough, Poa is his best putting surface, but past palm is second. So that's the reason for him. David Lipsky, I think he could be okay. Actually, funny enough, I think what we just looked at that Corn Ferry event, the Great Exuma, I believe him and let's go take a look. I don't want to state something that I might be incorrect. Let's go verify this. I thought there was a Corn Ferry event that he did well. I thought I saw him and Doug Gim like right there. There's Corrales, Worldwide Tech. So he's had some decent showings. Like I said, I don't think he's a bad pick, just not exactly fitting. Kazire, you guys know my broke back guy. No, thank you. Not the. Wait till I get to Texas again. Maybe at the Byron Nelson. Lanto, he could be a sneaky kind of play. Still trying to figure out how he's doing health wise, but yeah, not really top of mind. We'll put it that way. Dylan Wu, again, solid. Been playing solid. Doesn't really have the distance. So again, kind of sticking to the guys that I'm focused on. But again, he'll get around the course fine. The guy does typically score. You can see some birdies there. Eric Cole, no. Again, I've kind of put him into the plotter, kind of give me, Colonial, RBC, RSM, like the acronym ones. That's where he fits. I was kind of shocked. For some reason, I thought Harry Hall. He's a big guy, big European guy. I mean, he hits the ball. It's just kind of funny that driving distance doesn't show up for him. I don't think we have a ton, but he did well at Corrales. Let me see something here because I kind of passed over him because I didn't see the distance, but I just feel like that guy's got to hit the ball pretty far off the tee. Pretty good sized dude. So good showing at Puerto Rico. Corrales. Yeah, I mean, maybe not a bad play. He's been playing pretty good golf. I actually trying to think now who he was paired with at the Zurich. They did okay. Francisco Molinari, no way. That is, if Francisco ends up top 10, then I think all of our analysis has been thrown out the window. What we think this course is. There's Akshay. We talked quite a bit about him. Of course, like I said, does everything I want. Good price tag. You can see maybe not the greatest here, but the guy makes a ton of birdies. He's done well over and over in these kind of events. So I hope that runs true. Doug Gim, I put right there with Lipsky, kind of their skill sets. No, thank you for this. Strillman, nope. Novak, I think he actually had a pretty good, he had a T15 here. But again, doesn't, so, I mean, there's a showing, I mean, doesn't really have the driving distance, but the putter, which is kind of funny, did all right. Michael Kim and some you'll know, actually, those guys did pretty well in the Zurich. I was kind of shocked. And you can see, I guess he's actually been putting together some golf. So for 7,300, Michael Kim's been such a disaster, right? I mean, he had his win. Oh, geez, it's been so long. So he won the John Deere pretty early in his career, and then he just went bad. I mean, struggled. Just trying to see. I mean, yeah, he's had the Panama. That's Corn Ferry, Puerto Rico. I don't know. I mean, right now, I don't know. Let's look at the ownership, but I'm not on him right now, but it is kind of interesting. He's kind of been in good form. Harry Higgs could have a good showing here, but no, I'm going to go with EVR. I mean, this is kind of, like I said, a griot pick. Like, I just know what these guys can do from the irons. It is a unique skill set that not every guy has. And sometimes it's not always there, but when it is there, it's amazing what these guys can do. I like this Vincent Norman. Also showed up, had a good day, a Saturday at the Zurich. Him and again, I don't remember their partners, but went nuts with his European partner. Has a distance. Also showed up at Corrales and Puerto Rico, so I'm pretty interested in him. Charlie Hoffman, funny enough, I mean, the guy's been ball striking. Also, him and Watney again made the cut. I think I picked those guys as one of my 12 teams. I hope, because I told you guys they only missed one cut ever. It was last year, and then they made the cut again this year and had a pretty good showing. But I mean, had a good showing at the Valero, good showing at Zurich, for whatever that's worth. So I mean, I don't think it's a terrible play. Adam Long, like you're gonna see, I'm gonna play Adam Long if his ownership is crazy low and he does not fit my bomber kind of narrative on what I'm playing. But you can see gains on past Palom. And if we go look, like I think I've showed this in a previous life, OHL, Corrales. Like when you go down this guy where he's done well, it's been vacation swings quite a bit. Mayakoba, seeing if there's any with like top 20s. Again, I mean, the guy's had some pretty good showings, but like I said, Al Cameleon is a little different beast. It's a little shorter. It's, more accuracy kind of thing. Pierre Malnati, nope. Great putter. Again, I would put him on more about, I don't know. Funny enough, he's had good showings at Sanderson Farms, but no, it's just not. Jimmy Walker's been showing some life. All right, let's get it. Cameron Champ, you already know. I talked about if you want a bomber. I think everybody knows Cameron Champ hits the ball. These are kind of guys that I'm interested at 7,000. Augusta Nunes and Carly Juan, right? I mean, I showed you that he came behind in actually like a third at the Corn Ferry event that was on Pass Palm. Very similar. This Augusta Nunes has been playing some good golf. And of course, it's in Mexico. So I would have to guess that he might have some fans there and be pretty pumped. This Matty Schmid is a German, I believe, right off the Euro Tour. Not to be confused, which I have done with Matthias Schwab. But anyways, you can see he does a lot of the things. I mean, he comes up fifth in my model. Not the greatest scoring. He's never played this event. And I'm pretty sure I looked. We don't have a lot of information, but again, it hits at 320. I don't know. It seems like it'd be a pretty good fit for him. Let's go do this. So he's had an okay showing at the Puerto Rico not too long ago. Butterfield, missed a cut at Corrales. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a ton of data on him, but I mean, his skill set, what we know of him, and also, of course, I feel like European guys, if it is windy, which right now it says it's not going to be, but if somehow it does happen, which kind of shocking that in the afternoon that you're not going to have some winds on that course, could make sense. Matthias Schwab, I know it looks ugly here, but he showed up. Maybe it was because of the last 3 events. Somehow he got on my radar, and I'm trying to figure out why now. Okay, so he should have. Oh, okay. So I guess it's his. When I pulled up comp courses, he popped up there. So Puerto Rico, Corrales, OHL, Worldwide Tech, Corrales. Like, I mean, he's had some good finishes on Pass Palm. So I guess that was the reason. Lucas Glover, good ball striker. You could play him here. I don't have a huge issue. It just wasn't really on him. He doesn't have crazy distance, but his guy's accurate. Hits that draw perfectly every time. Hammer and Hanks have some good showings at these kind of vacation swings. I'm actually kind of interested in Gerard. Kind of sticking with this guy a bit, just see how this all shakes out. But I feel like, again, just got temporary status. And I like his game for this. And of course, we don't have enough information. You can kind of see, had an 11th at Puerto Rico, but missed the cut at Corrales. So you figure that how you want. Dylan Fratelli's got a lot of pop on the bat. Just side note, I mean, it's been bad. I think they didn't make the cut. His team, Ben Taylor, I feel like he's had some good showings in these kind of events. I'm kind of going to that Brent Grant again. Just specifically, I'm on this kind of path of, you see what he did at Corrales, Puerto Rico. I am going with the guys that have distance. Kevin Tway. It's kind of funny. Kevin Tway, I don't know, prior to Cameron Champ was always kind of known as one of the longest drivers on tour. And then you get all these other guys that hit the ball so far. Let's see what Kevin Tway typically hits it. So yeah, it's like now he's kind of like, 308 on average. That's nothing. Just kind of interesting. I would have to guess he's had to have some good showings. So far, what I see at Corrales for me would be the closest at a 28. But yeah, not a big Kevin Tway guy. Colin Terrence got some pop in the bat. He hasn't been playing very good golf, but he showed up. Oh, geez, it's been a while. I'm not going to click on it. Bryce Garnett, funny enough. Let's go look at this real fast. Again, he came on my radar for these kind of events. Let's find out why. Oh, he won Corrales back in 2018. It's only when the Puerto Rico, OHL. So he's also had, quite a bit of success on island courses and also past Palm. Almost like a specialty. I mean, look at this. Corrales, Puerto Rico, OHL, OHL, Puerto Rico, OHL, Corrales. I'm not lying. I did not, seriously. He came on my radar probably because of when I was pulling comp course stuff. He's not the guy that I was thinking of, but that could be an interesting play at 2.2. Now, again, everything else is telling him he's been, okay, made the last 4 out of 5, had a T8 at Corrales. So did a T33 here. I'm not saying bet him to win this thing by any stretch, but a top 20 and also as a play at 6,700. So I'm going to click him. I think I'm going to put him in the player pool. He's probably a better play than Nicholas Chivari. I know, dude, I'm going to screw that up all the time. I don't know why it's that hard. It's not. But unless I literally think of it, I mean, as you see, the Valero and the Puerto Rico, but this guy's been pretty volatile, and he's been doing a lot with the putter. So maybe I do that. Maybe I'm off him. I'm going to plug in Bryce Gurnett. So there was a change on the fly. I kind of like this Tanya Goyo. I believe he came off the LATAM, Corn Ferry. The guy's been playing pretty solid golf. So just side note, I didn't pick him, but I don't have an issue with him at all. Also, I don't know if they made the cut at the Zurich, but I know he was there, whatever that means. Okay, Brandon Matthews, just purely distance. I felt like I kind of watched him, and I don't know if you guys watched, but he missed quite a few putts towards the end there. Sean O'Hara was probably losing his mind. If he could have made some more putts, these guys could have had a better chance to win that thing. Just side note, but I'm picking him. I also feel like when I clicked on his wins, he came up with, I think, a Corn Ferry event that seemed pretty. It's like the Panama, the Estero, where was that? The Astra, whatever. Yeah, that's in Bogota. So that was, I feel like that's a pretty similar kind of deal there to what we're talking about. The Astra, the Panama, Corrales, Great Abaco, Great Exuma. I don't know. He's shown up here or there where that distance can definitely come in handy. So I like Brandon Matthews, Grayson Murray. Again, like I said, had a showing at the Puerto Rico. Also didn't look too bad there at the Zurich. Kevin Roy. This is the guy I wanted to go look at. Yeah, I mean, 312 on average. That's pretty good distance. I don't understand why that's not showing up on the radar when you pull up driving distance. A little confused about that one. But I was pretty sure that guy could hit the ball pretty far off the tee, him and Grant. So there's that Great Abaco. He had a good showing. Abaco, I'm pretty sure that's also an island swing. Yeah. Yeah, TPC, and that is past Palm. I'm almost 100% sure. Now, it's not a super long course, but it is ocean and island course, and it is past Palm. So he didn't win it, but he was right up there. All right, I think that's it from my picks. Oh, Kyle Westmoreland. If you want one more guy, again, another KFT, Corn Ferry guy, hits the ball a ton. That's about it. You're going with purely he's got a big driver. Let's summarize this real quick for you to get you guys moving on here from a picks perspective. Okay, so I've highlighted 24 guys that'll be in my player pool. John Rahm, you got Wyndham Clark, Nikolai Horgard, Patrick Rogers, Benny Martin, Emiliano Grillo, Garrick Higo, Brandon Wu, Matty Wallace, Will Gordon, Joseph Bramlett, Nate Lashley, Akshay Bhatia, EVR, Eric Van Rooyen, Vincent Norman, Augustin Munoz, Carl Wan, Ryan Gerard, Britt Grant, Bryce Garnett, which that was kind of on the fly, Brandon Matthews, Grayson Murray. And when you get down to these last guys, it's all, just one lead skill off the tee and hope that the other things come together. Kevin Roy and Kyle Westmoreland. That is my top 24 picks for you guys. And now let's go look at ownership projections. Okay, so now I've moved over to ownership projections, again, out of Fantasy National, and I just updated this, and not a ton of teams built. Again, not too far from the Zurich. This will get to more, but it is Tuesday around noon, but at least gives you an understanding of where ownership lies, and I don't think it's too hard to figure that out on your own, but right now I was saying John Rahm. Oh, and if you don't understand, this is people using Fantasy National to generate the 150 lineups, right? They're going into the big game or whatnot. That's where this data is coming from. But you got, like I said, John Rahm, which I said is not going to shock me if in the big game that he ends up at pretty close to 40% when it's all said and done. And I think that's, that's where we got to, if you want, zig, zag, right? I mean, if everybody's zigging, we got to zag. I will build lineups without John Rahm and without Tony Finau, to be honest. But the top three, Clark, Finau, and Rahm are your top three highest owned. Then you got Stefan Jaeger coming in there, which, I said I didn't pick him, but I don't think it's a bad play. I like the Nikolai Hargard. I got Rogers. Where you see this highlighted, that's my pick. So again, if you're not clear about my picks, and again, I'm just saying this, some people that tweeted out previously when I did this just didn't know exactly what I was picking. Luke List, showing up at 16%. That's interesting. Again, the skill set fits, but if you look at what he's been doing, terrible at the irons and typically, terrible around the greens, terrible putting, you're pretty much paying $7,800 for a driver, which I showed you guys way down to $6,000 that you can get a lot of guys that can hit the ball a long way for quite a bit less. So you got to make your decision there. because his irons have not been nowhere near what they used to be, what we saw, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago. Gary Woodland, Ben Wyand, which I stated again, pretty shocked that Ben Wyand has been gaining like he has. So even a better play than where I was at with him. So, I mean, I'm going to click him for you guys because I think if you're trying to like get off the Wyndham Clark chalk, I don't think Ben Wyand's a bad play because I'm shocked at how well he's been doing with the putter. Brandon Wu, Will Gordon with some of my picks, again, coming around 14, 15%. And then I'm just going to kind of scroll out. Ches Reavie, that's kind of shocking at 13. And my Joseph Bramlett coming around 13. Garrick Higo around 12. Akshay at 11. Then I got my Lashley, Benny Martin at around 10. And then here you go. You can see 6,300. So that's what I believe. Like a Kyle Westmoreland, you could literally look at what he's been doing from a stroke gain analysis and say, what's the difference in Luke List? I think Augusta Munoz is a better play than probably both of them. That's my own opinion. Cameron Champ, even though he's been in brutal form, but had a good showing here last year. It's almost at 10%. Vincent Norman, Kevin Roy. I mean, again, right there, I would rather play him than probably Luke List. Brandon Matthews, I think he even, Luke List was at the Zurich and they didn't even make the cut as far as if you want to just look at recent form, you can make an argument. Why not Brandon Matthews over Luke List? Matty Wallace, Brent Grant, and I'm just trying to see if there's any unique guys that I'm looking at. EVRs less than 4%, so you get a little contrarian. Grayson Murray, again, you can make an argument. Why not play Grayson Murray? He's actually had a good showing just recently. At the Puerto Rico I showed you guys. Ryan Gerard, Carl Juan, remember again, came third in that Great Exuma, but has also had good showings. I think we clicked on his. We did. Let's go look at him real quick. So you can see he's got the distance off the tee. I just wanted to do this because I don't remember we went through Carl. Yeah, not the greatest showing. Missed the cut to Puerto Rico. Let me go see Louisiana Open, the Panama. There's a Great Exuma, again, past Palm. He's had a lot of good showings on the Corn Ferry. And just trying to scroll down. Yeah, I don't know. I think his player set just kind of fits. And again, I'm saying he has had good Corn Ferry, but yeah, the data's saying, I don't know. That's a long shot one. We'll just put it that way that he could do well. Told you Adam Long does well in these events if you want to get different. I think he's someone that you could plug in. There's my Bryce Garnett that we did on the fly, less than 1%. Because I think, like me, everybody thinks Bryce Garnett is a plotter, and that means, right, hits it short off the tee, but accurate. But, man, the guy has lit it up. So I'm going to, you guys will already know if Bryce Garnett ends up bombing out, missing a cut, probably a lot of my DFS lineups for the large GPP will be dead. But I think I'm going to play a bit of him. And that's really it. All the rest, nothing that I've identified that I'm too excited about. Okay, so that gives you an idea on the ownership. Moving on to weather. And again, I just show you this because it helps you save you the time of figuring out which place to pull from. So this, in Puerto Vallarta, this is the airport right next to the golf course. So you're going to hear during the tournament, you're going to hear quite a bit of jets taking off and landing, which is kind of a little annoying. I've seen where guys literally in their backswings and hear them going off. But you're going to want to pull up this Luciano Gustavo Diaz Ordaz International Airport. Just totally butchered that, I'm sure. I just updated this, so we're getting the most recent. So let's real quick look at Super Forecast, which I don't know will bring in Thursday, I hope. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of like what I've been seeing. You get a little rain at night, but I mean, man, that's nothing for here. If that's what it ends up being, like a steady 8-mile-an-hour wind, they will torch this course, I think, if that's where it stays. And then if we want to look a little further out to the weekend, and I did try to pull the PGA weather, they didn't provide anything yet. So if I get that, maybe for the lock, I'll bring it up tomorrow. If I end up doing a show tomorrow, I guess if I see something worthwhile. But again, you can see 9-mile-an-hour is the high, sunny, 80s, 90s. The ball's going to fly a ton in that kind of heat. Same thing here. The highest that right now we're getting is Sunday. It could get 10 to 12. And if it's steady winds, that's nothing. If it's more the gusty that gets these guys, right? The big changes while you're, hitting the shot. But yeah, I mean, the weather looks perfect. It's probably the best weather we've seen for a golf tournament in a while. So I see no problem for these guys not to go low. All right, let's jump out of here and get this wrapped up. All right, so thanks again so much for spending some time with me. I hope that information has given you different ideas from a DFS side who you might want to play or from a betting side. And as always, if you do me the honor, click that like button, share with anybody else that might be interested in finding out this information. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Again, all depend on the tournament now. If it's kind of an off tournament, like I would consider this, I'm trying to do like one show that's got all the information in it. But if it's a bigger tournament, I try to, break it up into 3 different shows, all depending. Also, follow me on Twitter. I update anything on withdrawals or anything that you guys should know. And of course, some funny anecdotes that I see as I watch the tournament. And with that said, hey, enjoy the Mexico Open. I think, again, if one of the favorites, like a John Rahm or Finau, does, struggles for whatever reason, pulls out, gets hurt, this field is in wide open. And I'm always up for the long shot. And man, we are due, right? I mean, I go back. I mean, again, I don't know what the Zurich. I think those guys were like a 25-1, so I don't count. But like Kitayama really was probably the last long shot to hit. It's been a pretty lean year. Of course, literally, if you just bet the top 3 odd guys this year over and over, and put all the money towards that, you'd be much happier. But I think if you've been doing this well in golf, the reason why you bet golf is for the long shots. No, we bet football if we want to bet 2-1, 1-1, whatever. So, anyways. All that said, I hope we get a long shot. I hope one of these guys come out of nowhere, and I hope it's a good tournament and you guys enjoy it. Have a great weekend. I will talk to you I believe at the Wells Fargo next. So talk to you guys next week. Take care.